Jackie, we got Bikran on the line with us. What do you want to ask him?
How did you get to where you are? What education or who helped you put those pieces together?
Yeah, of course. So, when we first started, I didn't know anything about multifamily, like operations wise, and I didn't know where to go in the first place. So my wife and I essentially went to meetups in California. And at, one of the meetups, we had met up with one of a student, essentially of a mentorship group in Texas. So they recommended that, hey, we should go out to this mentorship seminar that they have. And we know what these mentorships are. They're essentially ways to get you into becoming a student
funnel.
at their, exactly. So we met a lot of people there. We met, they had over, I think, almost 300 people who were specifically looking at multifamily, and a lot of them, were brand new investors or brand new investors in general that were looking to either buy or looking to invest in deals.
Hey, I'm Brian Briscoe, host of the Diary of an Apartment Investor podcast, and this podcast is different from everything else out there. I bring together new and aspiring investors on each and every episode and let the aspiring investors ask the questions that they need answered. And if you're an aspiring investor yourself, you probably have the same questions. So before you get to this episode that we have prepared for you, make sure you hit the subscribe button and that little notification bell to make sure you get notified every time we post a new episode. And now, enjoy the show.
Welcome to the Diary of an Apartment Investor podcast. I'm your host, Brian Briscoe. Very excited for today's show. We got two amazing people on the line with us. We got Bikran Sandhu from Rise 48 and Jackie Swagerty. So guys, welcome to the show today.
Thanks for having us, Brian. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Well, Bikran, I haven't met you before. I've heard a lot about you. Your partner's been on the podcast, I think twice now. I'll have to go back and look. But anyway, welcome to the show, and I'm excited to have you on.
Yeah, no, thanks, Brian. I'm happy to be here as well, and I'm looking forward to it. I haven't been in this type of format before, so it'll be fun.
You know what? I think this is unique. I haven't seen anybody else do it like this. So it is a fun format. But anyway, let's start by talking about you a little bit. Do us a favor. Tell us about yourself, your background, and how you got into multifamily.
Yeah, of course. So back when I left college, I moved into the accounting business. So I was a corporate auditor with PwC, which is one of the largest Big Four auditing firms in the nation. And at that time, I was essentially auditing early, growth start companies, Fortune 100 companies, and some real estate companies. So really kind of understood kind of the breadth of the knowledge of how companies operate, processes, et cetera, and really kind of got intrigued by understanding, what management does to get the company to the next level. The problem with auditing is that you're always kind of looking in the rear view mirror, like what happened in the past, how can we make sure this was accurate? And then as opposed to kind of helping management move forward, we were always kind of just double checking, fact checking in the back. So after about 4 years in auditing, I moved into management consulting. That's where we really kind of dove in with the management staff to look into, how they're buying other companies, or like if they're going to spin off a division, what makes sense? How are they going to integrate a company that's just acquired, or like if their internal controls are in good positions. We helped companies go through audits, helped companies, make sure that they were compliant with regards to their accounting guidance that they needed to follow. Did that for about 4 years. And throughout my career, I touched on some real estate companies here and there and kind of just piqued my interest, how large multifamily or commercial real estate funds operate. And, at that point, my girlfriend and now my wife started looking into having our own little real estate portfolio. We lived in California at the time. And if you know anything about California, it's that you're not going to be buying cash flowing assets in California. You're going to be buying flips, essentially, and you're not going to make a lot of profit because you're going to buy at $500,000 and sell it at $700,000, maybe, if you're going to get lucky. So regardless to say, that was not what we wanted to do. We had our W-2 jobs. We couldn't go out to sites and manage a subcontract to flip a house. So we started looking into other forms of investment and started looking at, single family out of state, and realized that, okay, well, the property manager is going to eat up all the profits. So that's not going to make sense. And ultimately moved into multifamily. When I was, I'm kind of an Excel geek. So I ran some, analytics to figure out how many units essentially we'd have to own, or how many single family homes we'd have to own before it made sense for us to kind of slowly quit our day jobs. And at the end of every single iteration that I made, we
Yeah.
ended up with, okay, well, we're going to go into multifamily. That's how it's going to scale. And
Just out of curiosity,
yeah,
do you remember what your number was on the single
um,
family homes?
yeah, it was about 200 homes is what I needed
Okay.
to own for me to kind of completely quit my job and live
Okay.
off of passive income.
Yeah, mine was 60,
Yeah.
but it was going to take me, at my rate, it was going to take way too long. Cause I did the
Yep.
same exercise, just
Yeah.
spreadsheeted it out and said, how many is it going to take? But yeah, I was looking at 60 and the same thing
Mhm.
pushed me to multifamily, but
Yep,
yeah.
exactly. So we don't know anything about the industry, how to
Mhm.
operate deals and stuff. Obviously, I know the finance side. So we started going to meetups. We started going to these mentorship groups in Texas and Carolinas, and started kind of meeting people, meeting different sponsors. So, beginning of 2018, we kind of took our first steps into looking into multifamily investing, met a couple individuals, invested with them passively. And then at the same time, my wife and I were very goal oriented. So we wanted to be like, okay, well, in 2018, test the waters, see how this goes, see how the investment side works from an LP side. But
Yeah.
in 2019, we're going to buy our first deal, no matter what happens. So, and multifamily is not a single person game. You need to
Mhm.
find good partners to work
Yeah.
with. So while we were looking for syndicators, that were putting together deals, we had identified that we wanted to buy deals in Phoenix.
Mhm.
We liked the market. It was next to California, easy to kind of drive to, see the properties on site. So I was building some relationship with the brokerage community, but I am terrible at relationships. I'm better with Excel. So my main goal was really to find a partner that was really
Yeah.
good at relationships. So around the time we were looking for deals, I was also looking for partners in Phoenix, and that's how I found Zach Happensaw and Robert Shevchik, who are our co-founders at Rise 48. So towards the end of 2019, they had found a deal, they had gotten under contract, and they needed a little bit of extra cash. And I essentially put in all my life savings into that deal. I $150,000 directly into that deal, and my wife and I essentially looked at it and said, you know what, if we're going to take a risk, it's better to take it now. We don't have kids, we don't have liabilities we have to take care of. Like, we have a home, and that's about it. So let's just take the risk now. If it doesn't pan out, 30 years from now, we can just say, hey, we tried it out, didn't work. But I'd rather not look back 30 years from now and say, hey, what if we did this?
Yeah.
So thankfully, that worked out really well. And, since working with Zach and Robert on that deal, I just instantly knew, like, my skills are very complementary to what Zach offers and what Robert offers. So I can be the back office, I can underwrite, I can do asset management, run financials.
Mhm.
They can be the forefront of the company. And that's how we essentially started Rise 48 together. We did a couple syndications after that first deal, just to kind of date each other, quote unquote, on these deals. And then in 2020, formerly kind of abandoned our personal brands and moved into Rise 48 Equity. And, since that first deal, we've acquired 42 assets from 2019 to just last month essentially. And we've sold 11 assets overall. So we have about 30, we have 32 under management currently. It's been a ride, and we initially started off as just, hey, real estate's a hobby. We'll do like one deal or two deals every year, see how it goes. And then in 2021, again, my wife and I had the same conversation saying, okay, well, do we want to do this full time, or do we want to just kind of build it on the side? And said, you know what, let's just go for it. It doesn't make sense to slowly build it out. If we want to devote 100% of our time to this, we will. So in April of 21, my wife and I moved out to Phoenix, abandoned California, became a statistic, and then essentially built out Rise 48 with Zach and Robert since then.
Nice. I love that. I love that. Now, something that when you said taking out your life savings, the other thing that came across my mind is now's a great time to take a risk. But I was also thinking, you know what? And who better to take a risk on than yourself? I mean, you guys were getting into this property, launching this multifamily thing. Probably didn't know it at the time that it was going to be a future career. But yeah, I mean,
exactly.
What better time than now, and who better to bet on than yourself? So,
oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, cool. You guys, I mean, your rise, so to speak, has been, very kind of meteoric. You guys went from nothing to probably one of the largest operators, if not, are you guys the largest in Phoenix or close to it?
Yeah, if you look at Zach and I
Yeah.
talked about this for a while. Like if you look at CoStar, I think where we were number one back in January before we started moving out to Texas a little bit and focusing there. But then Blackstone beat us, I think last month. They bought some deals and we fell into number two. So
Okay.
that was
Yeah.
heartbreaking.
I mean, that's like very significant. I mean, first deal, I think you said late 2018, early 2019. And, from there you went to the largest operator in Phoenix. All right. So Bikran, I mean, I talked with Zach earlier, and I think he was very ambitious from the beginning.
Right.
Did you have the same ambitions as him? I mean, how does that work out? Who's really, pushing to grow that fast? Is it all three of you on the same page, or what are the dynamics in that partnership?
Yeah, I tend to hold them back. Zach is the more, hey, we're going to get this deal in a contract. We're going to figure out the equity raise along the way, and we're going to get it done. And, to his credit, of the 43 deals that we have gotten under contract, we have closed all 43. There's never been a situation where we get a deal under contract, freak out, and then fall out of contract. So, but on my end, there have definitely been a lot of sleepless nights and trying to find these deals. I remember the first deal that we syndicated called Villa Serena in August of 2019. It was around a $350,000 earnest money deposit that was going to go hard day one. We weren't able to look at the deal, no access agreement. We walked the property with the broker. We had our property manager there. We had a couple contractors there. We were asking as many questions as we could. And that first deal, Zach, Robert, and I kind of sat down and said, okay, well, everybody puts in, and we had a couple other partners as well. So everybody was putting in $75,000 as earnest money. And this was going to be gone. Like if we did not perform, that money's gone. We weren't sure about the debt. This is the first time we're doing a deal with a $13 million debt on there. I was personally freaking out, but Zach was just stone cold. He was like, hey, no, we're going to get this done. Don't worry about it. And, since then, we've put up earnest money going hard day one without looking at the deal at all. And I've kind of learned lessons along the way, making sure that we don't go upside down on anything. And the biggest lesson has just always been, hey, budget extra for CapEx, for instance, so you can budget for contingencies as opposed to trying to push the purchase price as much as possible. So that's the route we take. And every single deal we've gotten into contract, every time CapEx has always come in under on what our budgets have been. So thankfully that's worked out. But we walk the deal and talk about all the stuff we need to. But it's definitely very nerve-wracking. And Zach he'll be the forefront of making sure we get the deal done, but I'll be the nervous Nancy in the back, making sure like, hey, let's just make sure we have the equity lined up. We have all the pieces in place.
I'll be honest, I get scared over stuff like that. I get nervous, but I think I try to be stone-faced in public. It's kind of how it is. I try to be I'm not nervous, kind of have that look in public, but on the inside, a lot of times I'm like, holy cow, we got to raise how much?
Oh yeah.
Okay, we got this, deep breaths. Okay. Turn the camera on, let's go. But so something I really like about your guys' branding, I don't know if it's 100% of your properties you do this, but you usually change the names to Rise something, Rise on, Rise at. Whose idea was that? And have you done that everywhere or just in some places?
Yeah, no, on the first few deals that we got under contract that we put under assets under management, we didn't do that a lot. The first, I would say 4 or 5 deals. And then once we had kind of formed our company, Rise 48, and Zach kind of heads all the marketing aspects of, the deals and the equity company. And, from investors' perspective, we really like the fact that we can put our name on the property and say, hey, this is a Rise deal and not some random name out there. So we started doing that starting in 2021 with all the assets we had. So every deal we buy, we'll rebrand it and put our custom colors on there along with our signature signage at the property. So we have that across all our assets going forward. And it really helps us kind of stand out in the industry to the brokers, to the sellers. And, they know that we're actually a power player and we're not just hiding behind some random name.
Yeah. And, they also know who they're buying from too.
Right.
When you're selling stuff, if there's the word Rise on it, it's like, oh, hey, this is a Rise 48 property, right? So
exactly.
I love the idea. I think it's, a great branding thing. And something else is, I've been to Phoenix several times in the last year. And when I'm driving around Phoenix, hey, there's a Rise property, and knowing who you guys are, when I see that stuff, I'm like, oh, hey, there's another
Yeah,
one. Hey, look at
exactly.
that. So, it is kind of cool to see,
Yeah,
and the Rise and the sign is the same
yeah,
everywhere, but I love it. To be honest
yeah.
with you, I'm going to try to copy that. I just haven't quite figured
Go for it.
out,
Yeah,
it's not going to be
yeah.
Rise. I'll just tell you that right now. But
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
but I
Zach
got to
will
figure
fire up
out.
his legal team. Yeah.
Maybe I'll
Yeah.
call my company Rise 38, and that way there's a little bit of difference there. But
Yeah.
no, just kidding there. But awesome. Well, one question I'd like to ask everybody is about, motivations. So what would you say your why is?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I read a book by Simon Sinek. It's called
Mhm.
Find Your Why.
Yeah.
And that's really what kind of put me on the path towards trying to just achieve passive income, right? It was one very unique situation. Like, so, when you're working in a W-2 position, you get PTO, you get paid time off that accrues over time. And I like traveling with my wife here and there. So I always wanted to travel around. We wanted to hit all 50 states. We wanted to go to, other countries in Europe and Asia. And my issue was always that I could never accrue enough PTO. Like I always felt like, oh my
Mhm.
God, like I'm working, 40 hours a week and sometimes 50, 60 hours a week. And back in auditing days, almost working 100-hour weeks.
Mhm.
And I could never accrue enough time to take a week off because I was always taking these random days off to go visit family or go like a 3-day weekend to Washington to see my cousins or something. And that really kind of irked me a little bit. And looking at, and I know it seems like a small
Mhm.
thing, but if you look at it on a bigger picture, it's like I'm only going to live once in this life. I'm only going to be 28 once. I'm not going to get to repeat that life. I'm not going to get to have that same amount of energy that I had in the past.
Mhm.
So I need to find a way that if, this company that I work for, which is great, I love working at all the companies I have worked at, if they, have an issue someday in the future, or if I can't have enough PTO, like I don't want some random number to essentially monitor my life. So
Mhm.
that's how we started, looking into passive income and said, okay, well, we want to be in control of our time because that's finite. So how do we achieve that so that if something were to happen in the future, that
Mhm.
we would be protected. So that's really kind of what kind of motivated me to go into searching for passive income and then
Yeah.
ultimately go into real estate.
Nice. Nice. So do you have to ask Zach for time off?
I do. Yeah, he won't
Okay.
let me go anywhere.
Yeah. All right. Well,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
That's no
thankfully
problem.
it's our company now. So I just tell him like, hey, I'm going to Switzerland next week or next month or something. And as long as everything's planned out, we're good. But he
Yeah.
does give me a lot of hard time for taking a week off or something here and there.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, last question coming up. And what's next for you?
Yeah, on our end, we really want to build out Rise 48 as like the number one real estate company in the nation. So it's not a small dream. The way Zach, Robert, and I kind of see it is that we're only, again, we have this time window that where we can really execute and kind of perform to our fullest potential,
Mhm.
and that we don't want to take it easy essentially when we don't have to. So right now, our goal is to expand to Dallas. So we've bought 4 assets there. Our goal is to buy at least 2,000 to 3,000 units in Dallas.
Mhm.
And then, once we've established our company there, quote unquote,
Mhm.
that's when we'll start looking into other locations. But expansion is the number one thing. We want to buy around half a billion or 500 million to 750 million a year in real
Mhm.
estate across the nation.
Mhm.
And we work with retail investors, so we're getting equity checks of 50K,
Yeah.
$50,000 on average, and that's where we're aiming for. We're not aiming to
Yeah.
go institutional, abandon our livelihood to go institutional. We want to make sure we're 100% in control, and we want to work with investors that understand our vision and understand our
Yeah.
investment thesis on
Wow.
these deals.
All right. Well, I lied. Not the last question for you. So when you're buying these large properties and you're doing all retail, I assumed you guys were bringing in institutional capital at this point. How do you manage that many investors and get
Yeah.
that many people to come into each deal?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. It definitely required a lot of process development in the back end. So, we're raising somewhere between 20 to 30 million per deal that we buy. So every deal, at a median check size of 50K, we have anywhere between 1 to 500 investors in each deal. And, it's the relationship game. You need to make sure that when you're talking to investors, you help them understand what your business plan is, and keeping that business plan very straightforward and something you can multiply across various deals is very important. So, we don't go into different verticals. We don't do hotel conversions or office or industrial. We keep it simple. We do value add multifamily. So if you ask an investor that was with us in 2019 versus an investor that's with us today, the situation is the same in terms of the business plan. It's just that the size of the property has gone from 36 units, which was our very first deal, to now we're buying around 200, 300 unit buildings in Texas. So that's how we kind of manage it, keeping our plan the same. And, we make sure we have a good relationship with all our investors. So they understand, what we provide, and then they'll invest with us over and over again, because we don't try to, hide anything from them. We try to be as transparent as possible.
Transparency and rinse and repeat. So,
exactly. Yep.
Awesome. That's it. Cool. All right. Well, now we're going to switch gears and bring Jackie on. Jackie, how's it going?
It's amazing. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much. Well, I love hearing the stories and, just trying to figure out how to put all the pieces together.
Yeah, that's the fun part, putting pieces together. And I mean, here's the reality, once you start getting into bigger and bigger deals, you just find there's more pieces to put together, So anyway, let's start talking about you and tell us about yourself.
Okay, well, my name is Jackie Swagerty. I got started in investing about 7 years ago when my husband and I moved to Houston. He was an engineer with Kiewit, like heavy civil, oil and gas. He'd been in that company for 12 years straight. And I had gotten my start as a realtor and a property manager and trying to become an investor. And so when we moved to Houston, kind of did the same thing, Excel spreadsheet, put together our 5-year plan as a family. We'd had our first daughter, Juliet. She was 6 months old then, and just got to work. I got to work on the acquisitions, and I door knocked my neighborhood, and I sent mail outs. And our goal was to buy 2 houses a year and try to get to 10 houses in 5 years. We thought at the time that was ambitious enough, but also, I guess, realistic enough while also having babies. And we did. 2 years into it, we'd bought 4 houses, and by then we'd had JJ, our son. So then we had 2 under 2 and 4 houses, and he was still working his job. And we came home we're not from Houston, but we came home to New Mexico one Christmas, and his company was in between projects. He'd accumulated a bunch of paid time off, like 6 weeks. And so the other thing about his company is they moved him everywhere. And by then we started having babies. We were kind of wanting to put down roots. It's just tough to just keep moving and moving. So we were going to have to decide if we were going to pick up and move to Maryland, where we just didn't know anybody and we were so far from family, or if we were going to do something different. So I had just acquired, we'd had our house and 3 rentals by then. I'd been really getting into like off-market acquisitions. And I had just gone under contract on a property that wasn't going to make a long-term rental, but it was going to make a good flip. So we were able to borrow some private money on it. And driving back from Christmas, we just made the decision to basically give notice at his job after taking all the paid time off. And so we, but
that would have been a mistake.
project. Our reasoning was kind of like, the worst case scenario is the house flipping and investing doesn't work out and he has to go get a job, which is what he already has. And it's kind of the same. It's like, we're not going to get broker. Like, we might as well give it a shot. Like, we might as well give it. And we had like 6 months savings, like saved up. We bought this first property. We gave it a shot. And then a couple years later after that, we'd gotten up to 7 properties, 4 of them being Airbnbs for travel nurses by downtown Houston. We'd had the 2 babies. And once we got to 7, I just was really hit with the economies of scale problem. Me personally managing 7 or 6 properties,
Yeah.
7 with our primary, 4 of them being high maintenance Airbnbs, and 2 kids. And I had just gotten really lucky. A really kind lady named Janice Grass had taken me out for coffee. And she
Mhm.
was like, Jackie, I really think you need to look into multifamily.
Mhm.
And it was too big and scary for me. I didn't know anything about it. I was stuck in the mindset trap of I don't have this much money to invest, so how can I? And once I learned about raising private money for flips, it opened the doors there, and we did great there. And now that I'm learning about raising capital for multifamily, I am very excited to try that avenue. So where we are at now is my husband has worked for himself now for
Mhm.
4 or 5 years. We sold all of the single family properties, and 2 years ago I bought a 17 plex. I'm very happy for that. We got 3.25% interest rate. We bought it for 970, fully rehab, top to bottom, new roof, new ceiling, floors, everything in between. Property manager, I have not had to manage it one bit in the year and a half we've owned it now. And it's just been really wonderful.
Mhm.
Last week, we closed on a 5-plex
Nice.
for 125. And after walking it, I discovered I can add 2 more units to it.
Hmm.
And then it also comes with an old Napa auto parts store filled with stock car parts from the 80s. So I'm
Nice.
going to turn that into a laundromat or something.
Yeah, my dad's
But
Reliant K can now get parts, so that's cool.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do with that, but that was a fun bonus. And that was great. I bought that with private money, borrowed 150,000. So it's really nice to be at the point with my lenders. They trust me so much to even invest outside of Houston and invest with me personally in my deals, which I know they wouldn't want to take this property back. It's out in New Mexico. So I'm very grateful to have really great relationships and lenders moving forward, but I have not raised capital outside of, those deals in my flips.
Yeah.
My strength is definitely the acquisition side. That's what I love. I love going
Mhm.
off market. I love going direct to
Mhm.
seller. I've been a licensed realtor in New Mexico and Texas for over 10 years. I also run a women real estate investor group on Facebook with about 24,000 women that I own and operate. I'm very excited to try to use that for capital raising because I have not used it at all for anything but, helping women. And I'm just trying to put those pieces together. So enough about me. I'm ready to ask some questions.
Yeah, awesome. Well, a couple things that I like to point out. I mean, I like the philosophy you had. It's like we're not getting any broker. I mean, that obviously made me laugh, but
YOLO.
yeah, and the other thing that you said, yeah, what's the worst case scenario? And this
You're already living it.
Yeah, you're already living it. And I've realized that too, is just like the worst case scenario is I jump into trying to do my dream. And if it doesn't work, I'm back into a job, which is what I'm doing right now. So boom, why not? So anyway, let's get to that question part. And Jackie, we got Bikran on the line with us. What do you want to ask him?
Did you or do you have any mentors or coaches? Specifically, I'm curious, like, how did you get to where you are? What education or who helped you put those pieces together?
Yeah, of course. So, when we first started, I didn't know anything about multifamily, like operations wise, and I didn't know where to go in the first place. So, my wife and I essentially went to meetups in California. And at one of the meetups, we had met up with one of a student essentially of a mentorship group in Texas. So they recommended that, hey, we should go out to this mentorship seminar that they have. And we know what these mentorships are. They're essentially ways to get you into becoming a student
funnel.
at their exactly. So we met a lot of people there. We met, they had over I think almost 300 people who were specifically looking at multifamily, and a lot of them, were brand new investors or brand new investors in general that were looking to either buy or looking to invest in deals. And it's very Texas focused. So, they were looking at primarily owning in Dallas and looking to invest in Dallas. And we did not want to be in the Dallas market. It was just so overheated and competitive that we knew we were going to end up paying an arm and a leg to buy a deal out there. But in the back of our heads, we were kind of looking at it and saying, okay, well, we can join this program, but we're not going to raise any money out of this. What we're going to get out of this is find people to work with. And the first thing we identified in multifamily was we were not going to be able to do this together. It's or by ourselves. It was going to be, we wanted to buy 100, 200, 300 unit buildings. doing all the paperwork just by itself was going to be time consuming. So you could maybe do like 1 or 2 deals a year, and that wasn't going to be something that was going to work for us. So we joined the group. It was $30,000 to join the group. So we joined the group, and they have like an online Facebook portal that you can join, like a private Facebook group. They added us there. My wife and I essentially immediately went to the group, searched up Phoenix, Arizona, and added every single person that was in Phoenix. that was the first thing that we did. That's how we initially got connected with Zach and Robert. Was we found them through this Facebook group, and looking in hindsight, that 30,000 was well spent. Like, it was, if we could not find Zach and Robert, we would not be where we're at right now. So we ended up essentially joining the group, finding Zach and Robert, and then ended up going to where we're at. But that's how we kind of got started. They have a lot of good educational material out there on how to kind of run deals, but we just kind of joined it for the networking side. And then at the same time, I had bought, I don't know if you've heard of Michael Blanc, but he has like the syndicated deal analyzer online. Yep, we bought that. It was $150 at the time. I don't know what the charge now, but the purpose of buying that was so I can understand how these deals are valued. I have a background in understanding how companies in general are valued through their DCF analysis, but running 5-year forecasts, I essentially took the model and just reverse engineered it to create my own. But I was using their model to understand how these deals are valued and how you underwrite them appropriately. Yeah. So that was the 2 first steps that we took that really kind of shot us in the right direction.
Yeah, I also did coaching. Evidently, my coach wasn't as good as theirs because I don't have 2 billion in assets under management yet. No, I'm totally kidding. But I just hired a new coach right now for more along the business line. So I would say every time my trajectory is hockey sticked, there's been a coach right at that juncture point right there.
I would say the most important thing is to identify or understand what your goal is before you join a group, because it can very easily become very daunting and you kind of start becoming very, I guess, overwhelmed with information. But you establish a goal, I think it'll pay off.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to capitalize on everything and I want to watch all the training videos, but I'm very limited on time. We now have 3 kids and our baby is 1. So only recently am I able to kind of dive back into acquisitions. But it sounds like that's the key, to divide and conquer. Okay. So you've got your partners. How do you hire? Like, outside of your partners, what does your team or what does your organization look like?
Yeah. So when we first started, when this was like a side gig for us, it was just Zach, Robert, and myself. And then my wife and then Zach's wife were also incorporated. And so Zach and Grace, they essentially did all the marketing. My wife, Alice, and I did all the investor reporting. And then I did all the asset management. So, really kind of did everything that the company did internally. And then, one of the books I had read earlier was called The E-Myth, where they talk about how to build a company. And one of the things that I took away from that was, you should envision a corporate org chart for your company that you want to end up with, and then fill out the names of who currently does all those tasks. Yes. So that's what I did. And then at that point, I was also kind of tracking how much time we were spending everywhere. So as a business owner, you want to focus on activities that are related to raising the revenues of the company. So we started identifying things that were not related to revenue generation and what were. And the main 2 things that are relate to raising capital and finding deals. So our, mindset kind of became, okay, well, we currently do everything for these assets. What can we take off our plates where we can now focus on those 2 items that are going to grow the company and not so much the back office side? So our first employee that we hired in March of 21 was our director of asset management. And the reason we hired her was because Zach and myself were kind of doing asset management on and off, and it was taking up a lot of our time, visiting sites, running the investor reporting, understanding our business plan was being executed. So when we hired Kaylee, she essentially took on all of the asset management side and made sure that, hey, our renovations were happening, or the oversight of the property management was happening. It wasn't like me reviewing all the financials, it was her reviewing the financials now. So it freed up a lot of my time. And the second person we hired was our transactions manager, Brady, who essentially took over everything Zach was doing with regards to closing deals. So instead of Zach sending out DocuSigns for me to fill out my PFS and SREO, Robert to do his, etc., and giving all the paperwork to the lender, and I was helping that out a little bit. He was doing all that, and we passed all that on to Brady. So since then, we've essentially hired out. We have about 230 plus employees now, but we've hired out every single role, where we've kind of taken off more of the back office and the asset management and focused on acquisitions and raising capital.
Nice. I love that exercise.
Fantastic.
I mean, the drawing out your wire chart, and that's something that my coach put me through recently. And the same thing, which hats are you wearing?
Exactly.
And after doing that exercise, it accelerated my hiring process, and I've hired an acquisitions guy. We're now hiring somebody to help raise capital internally. And the next hire is, on my mind as well. And that's the asset manager. So yeah, I love that exercise, figure out where your company needs to be 3 to 5 years from now, plot all the positions, and man, it was a great exercise. So back to you, Jackie.
Okay, I'm going to keep going with questions until you cut me off. So you'll have to let me know.
Probably got one more question.
Okay, then how about, acquisitions or capital? I guess capital. What, and this is a 5-part question. No, just kidding. What has been your favorite? Gosh, there's so many. What has been your favorite way to raise capital? What's been effective? Do you market for investors? How? What are your favorite investor avatars? Are they real estate investors? Are they like high net worth individuals?
That was
any one of those.
That was
There
was a 5-part question.
Just pick whichever one.
Yeah.
No, it's interesting. So Zach, so we go and sponsor a lot of events, the local like multifamily events and stuff. And Zach recently was out at one of the conferences last weekend, and he was talking about how he first got started. And I can tell you that raising capital is the single most difficult thing in the world to do. It is not easy. It's one thing asking somebody to trust you with their capital. It's another thing to actually perform and get that result at the end of the day. So when we first started, we were able to raise maybe $1 million or $2 million total between Zach, Robert, and myself. We didn't have any track record. We didn't have any performance, and investors were essentially taking a risk with us, whereas they had other sponsors they could work with that had a track record, etc. So we had to work and grind very hard to start raising capital from our investors. And the bulk of our initial investors were our friends and family. Like my family put in close to $1 million in the first like 7-8 deals that we put in, and that was the bulk of my money. I was raising like $200,000 in deals. And the biggest thing that kind of helped us propel our capital raise was going full cycle on deals. And not just saying like, hey, I bought this deal and we went full cycle and got to a 1.9 equity multiple. We presented that information to our investors. We did case studies for them showing like, hey, this is what we actually did. It was not just the market taking it there. We actually did stuff for it, and really kind of showing what your experience has been kind of really helped us, perform. And after we started selling deals that we had under management, what happened was it kind of there was an inflection point where a lot of the initial investors that we had, in our deals that saw that we went full cycle, returned capital, or did a 1031 exchange, they started referring everybody they knew to us. So we started going from raising like $1 million, $2 million a deal to raising $20 million a deal, primarily because of that, inflection point of helping build out our track record and actually proving out the value add strategy. And from there on, it really kind of helped propel that capital raising. I would say like the number one type of investor that we have is, they understand value add multifamily, obviously, and they understand our investment thesis, and that's going to be really critical as you're starting a company that is going to buy multifamily or is going to raise capital. You want to make sure that your investors understand what you're doing. You don't want to, that's my personal opinion, you don't want to just make it so disambiguous that they don't know what's happening with their money, right? So when we go out to market, we tell them, hey, this is how much we're raising and this is what we're going to use it for. And a lot of the stuff that we do is, again, transparency is another thing that's incredibly important. Whenever we send out a deal to investors, we always send them, the investment slide deck. It's 70 pages long and it's filled with financial information. Like, we don't try to hide anything. And then if investors want the underwriting, we send them the underwriting. Like, we don't have any proprietary models. We don't say like, oh, I'm part of this group, so I can't send this over. They're going to give you $1 million. Like, there should be no proprietary model in the way for that to happen.
Yeah.
So, we also send them, the past. So we have like a company pitch deck. So every investor we talk to, we send them a bio about ourselves, along with actual past performance, like, hey, these are the type of investor reports you should get as an investor on a monthly basis. We send out monthly distributions as long as the deals support it. We send out, this is the investment summary you'll get based on the deals that you want to do. And we're very high touch. We want to make sure that every investor that comes in, we don't just pass them off to a VA and says, hey, work with this person to go sign your documents. If they want to get on a call with us, like, our Calendly links are on our website. Go set up a call, and we call them from our personal cell phones. I tell all the investors, hey, if you have a question, text me, call me. And if I can't pick up, I'll try to call you back as fast as possible. So making yourself available, being transparent, and having a way to showcase your track record and experience, I think are the critical items, because that's how you gain investor trust, and that's how they'll start putting money into your deals. And it's not going to happen all at once. You're going to probably and this is what happened with us. We had a plethora of investors on our first deal say like, oh yeah, I'll invest money with you as soon as you have a deal. And the moment you have a deal, they unfortunately are tied up, and their money is tied up, and they can't invest at this time, but maybe the next one. So, your first raises are going to go pretty poorly, I would say. And don't be surprised by that or shocked by that. If you think you can raise $1 million, you'll probably be able to raise $100,000. It's a sad reality of the fact. But, we've kind of grown very carefully on the equity raise side. And it's, you want to be mindful of the SEC laws. So you want to make sure you're appropriately raising capital. But once you've kind of identified a good way to raise capital, you pound the pavement. We keep our Calendlys on like every single day of the week. And if investors want to set up a call, we will do our best to make sure we don't miss those calls, because that's when you start losing that trust in the community in general.
All right, we are about out of time. So one last question for each of you. Bikran, you get to go first. How can investors learn more about you?
Yeah, so feel free to visit rise48equity.com, and if you want to learn about investing with us or learn about different projects we've done, there's a link on there. You can go to rise48equity.com/invest, I think, and then you can set up a call with Zach, Robert, myself, or our investor outreach specialist, Rob Krisky. We're available whenever on that calendar, and you can also email me, Bikran@rise48equity. That's my personal email. Nobody monitors it. I answer all the questions that come in, so as much as I can make myself available, we do that.
All right, awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Jackie, same question for you. How can listeners learn more about you?
Great. You can always email me at jackieswagerty@gmail.com if you need to get connected with me, or you can go to swaggertycapital.com. Brand spanking new, just trying to get it all set up, get it all put together. And you can also call me anytime. I've also got my Calendly set up, calendly.com/swaggerty. Very happy to talk to anybody, whether it's to help or curiosity about multifamily or anything at all. Love talking about real estate.
Awesome. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Very much appreciate your time. And I learned a whole lot and had a little bit of fun too. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Brian. Thanks, Jackie.
Thank you. Thank you, both of you.
Hey, if you like that episode, make sure to subscribe. But more importantly, if you haven't joined our multifamily educational community yet, which we call a Tribe of Titans, you are missing out. Get 30 days free by clicking the link in the description to this episode, or go to thetribeoftitans.info, and we'll see you there.